Greetings and salutations. Thank you for clicking on the video. Today I want to talk about playing back audio in Ubuntu. Particularly I want to talk about MP3 audio. This video will apply to those of you who have large MP3 collections like I do. I've been collecting MP3s for 15 years. If you have your music in other formats or you don't care too much about how it sounds, then this video might not do much for you, but if you're curious about such things, then keep watching for sure. First thing I wanted to talk about was the VLC media player. VLC is the king of media players irregardless of what operating system you use. It's available on all the platforms and it does just about everything. It can stream, it can record, it can convert, it can play video, play audio, just about every format ever devised. And I have been using it for video for years, but I have never really taken a good hard look at it for just playing back music and making it my music player. And I found that with a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of messing around with it, I could get it to do exactly what I wanted to do. And the main reason that I was interested in doing that is because VLC has its own codecs, its own decoders for the different file formats, and they are generally higher quality than what you would normally get in Ubuntu. I want to talk more about that later, but that's the main reason that I wanted to use VLC. So I imported a bunch of music here, and really what I want this thing to do is just play all this at random, and so I can just turn it loose and create playlists if I want to. And also I want to be able to click on an individual file that's in a folder and have it bring up VLC. It does everything I need. So you have the media library and you can just drag files and folders in here to do it. And then we also have a playlist creator and you can do the same thing. You just drag the files in there and then you have your playlist set up and then you can save that playlist and all kinds of stuff later. So that is the basic thing about it. The other reason that I wanted to give VLC a shot is it has a compressor in it. It has dynamic control built in the system. When I switched to Ubuntu Mate, I decided that I was not going to install the old Windows audio software that I had been using. If you've seen my past videos, I talked about some of that not too long ago. Put up a video about managing music, and I showed you guys some of that old software that I've had for almost 15 years now. And I decided it was time to move on from that. It was a little buggy. It was hard to get going in Wine. And so I said, I'm going to just totally commit to Linux. I don't want to put a Wine layer on the system. I don't want to have to install Wine at all. So VLC gave me the ability to set this up. And if you have a large collection of music, you know how it is when you set the thing to shuffle in the background and one thing is way louder than the next, so you go from one really loud song to a soft song, or you go to vice versa. It can be a pain. Well, there's a couple of things that you can do to level that out. I'm going to show you another application in a minute that will do some of that for you. But what you can do here is come to audio. They do have a normalization feature. It doesn't work very well. I tried that. What I ended up doing was going to the audio settings, going to all, going to filters, and enabling the compressor. You really have to do this here before you do the next step, or it will bring you heartbreak and pain because it won't, the next time it boots, it won't load this stuff up. So come here and you choose the compressor, all right? And make sure that that's on that line down there. And then the next thing that you do is go to Effects and Filters. They have a nice equalizer here. You can set that up. They also have a spatializer, which kind of plays with the stereo effect or the surround sound or whatever you got going on. I don't bother with anything over 2 channels. So this compressor right here is built into VLC. It's a standard component. This is not DSP that you have to go get. And I played around with this last night for a little while and played around with it this morning, and I came up with a bunch of settings here that really sounds good. What I want is just everything to be nice and consistent, but I don't want to process it to the point where it's destroying the audio. I want a little crunch to it, kind of like what you would hear on a good sounding radio station. I spent 20 years working in radio, so I'm kind of used to having things being a little compressed. And these are the settings that I came up with. So if any of you guys want to play around with this with your music collection, you can enable this and give it a shot. The settings that it comes with when you first actually turn this on are horrible. So give these a shot first. So for those of you who are more audio inclined, if you're used to working with a compressor, then you understand some of these settings already. So I've got a 12 millisecond attack time. I've got a 500 millisecond release time, 20 dB threshold. The ratio should be 4:1. I think I actually moved that fader a little bit. And then we have 2.5 dB knee and 6 dB of makeup gain. And this seems to work really well with my music collection, which is already leveled out a little bit with MP3 Gain, and we'll talk about that in just a few moments. If you want these settings to stick, before you start moving the faders and messing around with it, you really need to make sure that this is clicked. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to change my settings. If this is not clicked, it won't remember. So the next time that you boot up the program, it's not going to remember your settings. And this caused me a little bit of heartburn here because I didn't quite understand how this worked. You just click on it before you do any settings, and then it will remember it and write it to the config file, okay? So that's a look at the compressor. And it's unfortunate that YouTube is so copyright conscious these days. I can't actually play you any of this audio, but I can assure you that it sounds really, really good with those settings. If you have a collection of MP3s that is like all modern music, I'm talking about stuff that was recorded within the last 10 years, and you haven't used MP3 Gain on it first, that's probably not going to do you a whole lot of good. I'm talking about if you have mixed music, you have MP3s of all different densities and compression ratios and stuff, because a lot of the modern stuff, they just compress the bejesus out of it anyway. It's already really compressed. You don't want to compress it anymore. So that's a quick look at VLC. I'm not going to get too much into that because VLC is huge, and if you want to learn more about it, you want to learn how to get this set up to do what you want it to do, then you of course have help, and then they have a link here to the wiki. So great project, VLC. Figured I would give it some love up front in this video. Now let's talk about a couple of other things here. All right, let's talk about MP3 Gain. What is this program? What it does is it sets the playback gain of MP3 and OGG files and a couple of other formats too, and it does this in a way that is non-destructive. So it's not like it decodes the file, changes the audio level, and then re-encodes the file. And you might know that if you do that, take an MP3 for instance, decode it and save it back as an MP3, that you're losing a lot of data. I mean, this is why these are called lossy formats, is because you're taking some data away every time you run it through the encoder. And what this does is it takes your file and it listens to it and gets a average level and then recommends what level to change that to. Now I've got a couple of OGG files up here that I have already put in, and you can see that they've already been leveled off. And this 89 number in dB seems to be, it's standard. First of all, I've got 35,000 MP3 files that are already set this way, so I'd never change it. And this seems to be a really good place to start with MP3 Gain. Unfortunately, there's a problem with MP3 Gain in later versions of Ubuntu. The actual MP3 Gain module, the command line program that you need to use this easy MP3 Gain front end, isn't there. It's not included in the Ubuntu repositories anymore. They have AUG gain, ACC gain. I think I can show you this. Let's go to advanced here. So it's looking for this module here called MP3 Gain. It's not there. It's not in the repositories. Whether it's going to come back to the repositories, I don't know. I looked all over the place for it. I couldn't find it. It is available in Trusty Tar. That's Ubuntu 14.04, and it's available for Precise, which is Ubuntu 12.04, but it does not seem to have been available since 14.10 and on. So if you have an AAC encoded file, it uses the AAC gain backend, and then it uses the Vorbis gain backend. This really doesn't bother me because I'm not going to be creating any more MP3s. I have decided that any future music that I import into my collection, I'm going to do in AUG format. I am not going to be supporting MP3 anymore. I'm not going to go back and re-encode the 35,000 MP3s that I have, but that's the deal. So if you have a bunch of AUGs, a bunch of AACs, this will work on that, but currently it's not working well with MP3. But it's still a cool program to have around. And of course, if you happen to be using like Windows, you will probably be able to get that functionality. This seems to be something to do with Ubuntu and MP3. They don't want anything to do with MP3s unless it comes from Fluindo. I want to talk about that in just a few moments. We'll talk more about that. So anyway, you run all your programs through this, you run all your files rather through this program. It levels everything out, and then you get a nice consistent playback level. And then if you want to, you can add the compression there in VLC or any other player, okay? Now let's talk about MP3 versus AUG. There's a great program called Sound Converter that you can get for Ubuntu. And what this will allow you to do is convert your current audio format files to something else. So let's say that you have a bunch of mixed format files. You got some AACs, you bought them over here, you got some MP3s, maybe you got some AUGs, a couple of waves, whatever, and you want to turn them all into FLAC files. This will allow you to do that very easily. And we'll look at preferences here. This is a very simple little program, okay? So this will re-encode your files to the next format. I have been playing with it to do it in AUG format, but out of the box here, let's see what other formats we got. We can do AUG, MP3, FLAC, MS Wave, and Opus. And I bet you could probably add some more to that if you wanted to. And I just have it set up not to resample. I want to put the file, I was playing around with it, so I'm having it put the files on the desktop. But you can do like a whole folder of music. You can convert this to another format. And you can also delete the original file. So you could have this go through your entire music collection and just turn it all into one format. Now, when you convert from one file type to the next, then you're going to lose a little bit in the transfer. But I've been playing around with this and taking an MP3 file that's high quality MP3, let's say 192 kilobits and above, and then moving it into like a very high bitrate AUG Vorbis. See, I have this set to high, and I think very high gives you a 256 kilobit per second. So if you set this to very high, you're going to get slightly larger files, but I couldn't really hear that much of a difference from the original file and the converted file. So definitely an option to take a look at. No, I don't think I'm going to be converting all of my MP3s to AUGs simply because I don't want to take the quality hit. But I may buy some MP3s and then I'm going to want to be able to convert them to AUG so that I can run MP3 Gain on them, since I can't run MP3 Gain because I'm running nothing but Linux on them right now, and I'd rather store them in that format as well. So wanted to have that option open to me. That's a really cool program. I was kind of impressed with the quality of it after I did a little bit of tweaking. So let's move on and talk about tweaks that need to be done here to really get the absolute best quality. So another can move to another desktop screen. I did want to talk a bit about this. This is Banshee, and I like Banshee over Rhythmbox. They're pretty much half dozen one, six of the other, but I just like Banshee a little bit better. And I've been using this as my casual player for a long time in Linux. And I've never been satisfied with the audio quality. It just, the audio was gritty, and it sounded strange on certain songs. Now remember, I'm playing right now at this point 100% from MP3. If you load up a FLAC file, an OGG file, or whatever, it sounds great. And I never could figure out what was going on here. And I finally took a real good hard look at it this morning, and I've come up with some answers, although I do not completely understand what's going on here. So forgive me if I get some of this wrong, because I'm just learning myself. I just really have never looked at this issue. I've noticed that MP3 playback sometimes in Ubuntu does not sound as good as I think it should. And I pretty much figured out why. Okay, so when you install Ubuntu, and you are given the option at the install to install third-party codecs, if you take that option, what it installs on your machine for MP3 files is the GStreamer Fluindo MP3 codec. Canonical has a deal with this company called Fluindo, and so they have a free codec that you can get up front, or you used to be able to. I don't know if you still can or not. I found references to this online, so correct me if I'm wrong, gang. But you used to be able to buy a full codec package. The free codec that they give you sounds awful. It is not the sound card. It is not hardware. It did this on every machine that I've ever run. There's not a whole lot of solid information about why it sounds like crap. It just does. And so what I did today was I opened up the Ubuntu Mate welcome menu and installed the regular GStreamer codec package. Okay? So I have an MP3 codec that actually sounds pretty good now. Now what you have to do after that is you have to get rid of this Fluindo codec. So you can open Software Center or Synaptic Package Manager and just type in Fluindo in the search. And since we only installed the free codec, and it's taken a second to find it for whatever reason, searching through all of those files, that's why it's taken its time. Once it finds it here, you should only have one installed. This is it right here. And of course you see now that I have uninstalled that, so when you find it, right click on it and mark for complete removal. That's how to get rid of it. So this is what you're looking for right here. You can make it go away, or you can choose not to install it when you install Ubuntu and then go get the regular GStreamer codecs that sound better. And that takes care of a lot of problems. And that's important if you're going to be using the conversion program here to move from one to the next, because if you're reading from MP3 and you're using the crappy sounding Fluindo codec, all of the files that you create will sound just as bad. And I don't know what the deal is with that. I could probably do more research on it, but that was my solution to the problem. I just got rid of that Fluindo free MP3 codec, and fortunately the folks, the Ubuntu Mate crew has made it available here that we can get some good sounding codecs. So from this point forward, I think that if you installed Ubuntu Mate, I would probably say don't install those third-party codecs that you're offered up front, and then wait and do it here. And then, of course, you can go through the software boutique and you can choose whether you want a flash player and all of those other things that come in that little package. So, still learning about that. And for right now, I'm happy because I got it to do what I wanted it to do. And since I was able to get rid of that codec, now Banshee sounds good. Even it doesn't have the nice little compressor feature in it, but if I want to use Banshee, I can. And I can use the conversion software here to create files from MP3s, turn them into OGGs or waves or whatever. So that's cool. And of course, now I've started to deep dive into VLC, and I think that I probably am going to use this for my default media player, because I really like the way that compressor sounds. And I really wish I could play it for you, but I can't, because if I did, then copyright bust, you know. So maybe somewhere down the road here I'll take some copyright-free material that actually sounds good and run it through it. But you can try it yourself. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. I know that this is kind of intensive for those of you who are probably not that audio-oriented, but some of you probably got something out of it. And we'll talk more about this subject as we roll along. I just really wanted to get to a place where I was totally Windows free. I didn't want to have to install the wine layer, and so I'm exploring the audio production and audio playback stuff in Linux for future reference. Be sure and check out freedompenguin.com, check out Easy Linux on the web, and check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And if you do, give it a like. I sure would appreciate it. We will do this